So rehabilitation, what do we mean here? We're talking really about the process of recovery from an injury caused by medical negligence.
Well, I think it's widely accepted that the sooner you can undertake rehabilitation, the better the outcome.
And how does compensation actually help in terms of rehabilitation? Because it's money after all.
It's easy to say to someone, here's some money, go and get some therapy. They don't always know exactly what they want. They don't know the appropriate provider or where to go.
The key point there, isn't it, is the admission of liability.
Yeah. Helping with the physical side often helps with the emotional side.
Hello, welcome to today's episode of Medical Negligence Matters. And today we're going to be talking about the importance of rehabilitation following medical negligence. And with me to talk about that is my friend and colleague, Tami Frankel. Hello, Tami.
Hi, Gillian.
So rehabilitation, what do we mean here? We're talking really about the process of recovery from an injury caused by medical negligence. And what role do you think rehabilitation has in these sorts of cases?
Well, I think it's widely accepted that the sooner you can undertake rehabilitation, the better the outcome. And so it's better for people if they can start early on in the process rather than later in the process. And it can help them with things like getting back to work, getting back to their normal lifestyle and activities, and feeling more like themselves and recovering in the broader sense of the word, not simply physically.
I think that's it, isn't it? I mean, rehabilitation covers the whole spectrum of recovery, really, both from the physical effects of the injury that's occurred and also the psychological and social aspects of it. And perhaps we can think a bit about the type of support that's available. I mean, what sort of things do you feel that it's important for you to recommend to your clients?
Well, it's usually therapies such as physiotherapy or OT to help them physically recover, be more able with their activities of daily living, to be more independent, because one of the things that people really struggle with is having to ask people to do things for them, with being dependent on others. So if they can undergo some sort of physiotherapy to allow them to be able to make their own cup of tea, if they can do OT or something, if they can get themselves to the bathroom. People hate having to ask someone else to come to the bathroom with them. If they can get out of the house a bit more, all those sort of things build up to making the person feel better and recover more quickly. Yes,
and of course OT, occupational therapy, I mean, that really is concerned with adaptations to someone's living environment, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
It's thinking about what sorts of equipment, what sort of specialist aids might be there to help people, as you say, do things for themselves rather than have to have things done for them. And I think that's very important in the recovery process. And obviously those aspects are really looking at the sort of the physical side of things. And what about the sort of emotional, psychological side? I mean...
Well, helping with the physical side often helps with the emotional side. And it's to do with feeling able, being able to do your own things, being master of your own universe again. So and some of the things, as you say, it's aids and therapies, but aids can be really small things. They can be the tool that helps you put your own socks on, so you can get yourself dressed in the morning. You don't have to ask someone else to do it. And, for instance, you don't have to get up at 8 in the morning to get dressed because your partner still goes to work or something. You can get up later. You can do things. And all of those things make people feel a bit better. And if you feel a bit better, you do feel more recovered. And it enables them to be in the right state of mind to undertake therapies which will help them with their proper physical recovery.
Yeah. And sort of the counselling and psychological therapies, I suppose, also are helpful in terms of rehabilitation in helping people to adjust to an altered reality, isn't it? Because for many people, a life-changing injury is just that every aspect of day-to-day living is affected. And for many people, that the psychological burden of that is enormous. And so I think that the psychological support as part of the rehabilitation process is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, no, equally important, because you can only, if you're not going to be able to help them recover completely physically, they are, as you say, going to have to get used to a new reality. and they are going to have to learn to deal with whatever that may mean for them, which may well be reliance on people maybe not being able to go to work, not being in charge of their own routine as they're used to. And yes, there are therapies such as CBT and other therapies that help you to learn to be able to do that and still be happy, not to ruminate, but to move on.
It's new ways of thinking, isn't it? And I think that is what people find can be a sort of a positive result from that kind of therapy. And how does compensation actually help in terms of rehabilitation? Because it's money after all.
Yeah, it pays for the therapy. But of course, it's easy to say to someone, here's some money, go and get some therapy. They don't always know exactly what they want. They don't know the appropriate provider or where to go. And so in larger cases, your first step may well be to help them to engage a case manager being someone who is able to do that for them, can assess them properly for what types of therapies they might need and what would be beneficial. Because most of us don't know what exists, even what the possibilities are. Then we'll help them to find the right people to assist them, and we'll help with every aspect of that, including the mundane aspects such as employment law. If you're employing someone, you might have to insure them on your vehicle if they're going to be driving you. Your household insurance may need changing, all those sorts of things.
I suppose that's right, isn't it? You're identifying the need firstly, but then also identifying the solution for that, and importantly, implementing it.
Yeah, providing it as well.
Because the theory of it is no good at all unless you can actually implement and provide access to that. And the compensation, as you say, provides the funding for that, because obviously all of these things are very expensive and sadly not significantly available within the public sector, other than to a very limited extent. So how does rehabilitation fit into the legal process?
Well, you do need the money to engage your case manager, to engage in any of the therapies. There are 2 stages at which you would normally be able to start with engaging it. Firstly, if you have an admission of liability or judgment entered for your client, you can ask for an interim payment, which means that the defendant is giving them a payment on account. We all know that the defendant's going to be paying something to the client. We don't know how much yet. That hasn't been decided. But they're not going to keep them out of the money, and they're going to help them with rehabilitation. And so you can use your interim payment to fund an immediate needs assessment, which is when your case manager first sees them and works out what would be helpful, and then to fund whatever is found to be advisable for that person.
And I suppose the key point there, isn't it, is the admission of liability.
Yeah.
Because I know some people may have heard of things like the Rehabilitation Code, which is applicable particularly in personal injury cases, road traffic accidents, accidents at work and that sort of thing. Of course, the significant difference with medical negligence is in the vast majority of cases, in the first stages, there's no prospect of an admission of liability. So the code really doesn't apply in the same way. And so an interim payment can be the earliest stage.
Real life saver for people. That's why it's important to investigate breach of duty really early on and to get your case strong as early as you can so that you can hope to do that for your client.
And I guess once you've got your interim payment, at that point you can really, first of all, start to put in place a rehabilitation package, which is important evidentially, isn't it? Because I think that if you are ultimately going to be asking a judge to award compensation for a particular type of therapy or a particular type of equipment and that sort of thing, actually having that implemented and demonstrably working to the patient's benefit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because as a claimant, you have to demonstrate, you have to prove that you would undertake the therapy. It's one thing having a case manager recommend 3 types of therapy. The person, the claimant, has to say they would undertake it. And there's no stronger evidence to say that you would, because lots of therapy is a commitment as well from the claimant. There's no stronger evidence than to already be undertaking it, to be benefiting from it and to be seen to be keen to continue with it.
Yes, so to be able to prove that it works and that it helps. Can you say any sort of real life I'm trying to think about trying to put this into context for people, any sort of real life examples of practically how rehabilitation has helped people?
Well, I think one of the biggest is where you have someone who has a brain injury of some sort. So their life really has been turned upside down, and probably the lives of at least one other person in their household. And it could be a child who's been born with a brain injury, or it could be an adult who's been injured in later life. And then if you're able to get an interim payment, which allows them to purchase adapted accommodation, which then allows them to have the care regime they really need and the therapies they really need, they benefit from it because they really are having the best life that is now possible for them. And their family benefit from it because they don't have to be the carers all the time. They can go back to being the wife, the husband, the daughter, the son, whatever they were, and they can go back to work or whatever they did separately as a couple or as a household.
Yes, I mean, I think all of us who deal with this work in any significant way will have, I suppose, stories about claimants who finally having that rehabilitation package, having adapted accommodation, having assistance, it enables them to, life is never the same as it was before, but becomes something more like a semblance of it.
Yeah.
Which I think is enormously beneficial. So what, in terms of the legal process, what's the role of experts in this sort of field?
In this field, experts will tell you what sort of help will help that particular client with their particular injury. So they make the recommendations. And once the recommendation has been made, that's when you want to try and implement it, if that is what your client wants to do. And then together with, you have the expert saying, this person would benefit from this. And then you have the proof of the pudding. You have the person actually employing or doing whatever it is. And you can say, here, look, we've taken this expert's advice. It's really worked for us. It's really benefiting us. Look at how I'm doing now. I mean, for me, when I've been to see clients after when things are in place, two of the big areas that I think really make a difference are bathrooms. People who are significantly disabled, having a bathroom that means that a fully equipped wet room, really, that means that they can be toileted and showered somewhere separate, and the person working with them has the optimum equipment, whether it's hoists or whatever, to help them do that. It's just such a good thing for dignity and things like backache when you're just helping to manage someone. And the second thing is kitchens, especially with adults or older children. Families spend a lot of time in the kitchen, and it's really nice when they can still do that with the disabled member of their family being nearby, maybe just being nearby or being able to help. You can have lowered worktops, you can have perching stools, whatever's needed, just seeing how it really does make a difference. It's way more than theoretical, it really is practical.
And actually, you've just reminded me that I think one of the other areas where we often see very, very significant benefits is in cases of amputation, where people who've lost a leg normally or something like that. The availability of prosthetics in the private sector is far beyond what might be available in the NHS or publicly funded. And I think that it can be transformative for people to have access to expert prosthetics sort of specialists who can recommend special replacements and this sort of thing, which are
limbs for different purposes. They can go running again. People can wear heels again. The things that make you whoever you are, continue to be that person. And it's not just functional. I mean, cosmetically, the legs and other prostheses that are available privately can be matched much more closely than what the NHS is able to offer to people.
And going back for a moment to the question of experts, because I think that many clients struggle a little bit sometimes with the number of experts that they have to go and see. Not only because it's the physical having to get to an appointment. And obviously some experts are able to visit clients at home, but not all. And so the client does have the problem of physically having to get there, having the expense of getting there. And I think I've had clients in the past sort of question, well, why do I have to see so many different people? But I think it is important that there are so many different areas, aren't there, of rehabilitation, and it is important to have the proper advice
from the individual who's properly qualified in whatever area. And I think when we start to get the reports in and they see the recommendations, they understand it. And I mean, there are some things that people don't think about. So, for instance, when they're ordering a wheelchair accessible vehicle, a WAV, they go along to a dealership somewhere, look at the big cars and say, and they're almost sold one. Someone, sort of the dealer will say, we can do this so that you'll get your wheelchair in here, or so that you'll be able to transfer your child in and keep the wheelchair in the back. Whereas if you have an OT who comes to you and says, actually, the things that are on the market include this, this and this, and in your circumstance, so sometimes it's better to keep the person in the wheelchair and have it in, and sometimes take them out of the wheelchair. They'll talk to them about what the options are. And the best option might be to do with your family. If you have other children, lots of families want their children to sit together like they would normally. They don't want the child in the wheelchair to be sat in the back with the two other siblings, sort of in a row in front or something. And I think it's when those little things, when they see those in a report, that they understand the importance of all of the experts. But it is overwhelming for them sometimes.
Yes, and practical advice for claimants. I mean, I think a lot of people find it overwhelming, isn't it? And this idea that they feel that they have to take the initiative in finding these things. But in fact, it's part of the role of a specialist clinical negligence lawyer, isn't it, to be able to recommend these things?
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the importance, if you're considering a claim, of going to a lawyer who has experience of dealing with severe injuries. I think that's fair.
I think it's more than fair. And it's not just that we might have an idea of who to recommend, but actually that we even know what needs recommending. I mean, not every lawyer would know even to get an immediate needs assessment, to find a case manager who is used to working with people with that sort of disability or injury, or who's had whatever it is happen to them. I mean, there are times when we actively match a case manager to a client, personality-wise or something, as well as, sort of. So, yeah, it's really important.
Yes, that knowledge from dealing with other similar cases is really invaluable, isn't it? And finally, sort of looking forward, just thinking about the role of rehabilitation in sort of resolving the cases and I suppose in life going on after the claim has finished. Rehabilitation, I suppose, is just such the key aspect of trying to return a client to some sort of normal existence.
Yeah. And their family, because people who are needing a lot of adaptations and therapies are like their injury is likely to have impacted their family as well. And if you've got a person's family having had to give up work or stop work, it'll allow them to go back to work. It can help with the other children in the family, because an injured child takes up a lot of time and energy. And they often find that, for instance, grandparents are more able to spend time with the uninjured children, and it means that they feel they don't give their uninjured child as much time as they'd like. It normalises absolutely everything for everyone,
It just occurred to me, actually, quite apart from, we've talked a little bit about, obviously the physical rehabilitation and sort of psychological rehabilitation, but one other quite important aspect is vocational rehabilitation. Yeah. I mean, it's not something that comes up in every case, but of course, if someone's suffered an injury which makes their previous employment impossible, and yet there's somebody who does want to carry on working, vocational rehabilitation can be really useful.
It can help them to find something else that they enjoy. Everybody, apart from earning an income, everybody has to spend their time doing something. And it's not only older people who are injured who then have to find an alternative, but even with children, they'll have their education. It can be a specialist education up to about the age of 19. But after that, they need to do something with the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week they have. So vocational rehabilitation is really, really important,
And it's all really about sort of minimising the impact of the injury insofar as is possible, isn't it? And maximising the possibilities for the future. And that's what rehabilitation is all about.
That's what it's all about, giving them a decent life,
Thanks, Tami.
Thank you.